this computer. Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Lorraine Nowlin, and I am the facilitator of Women's Declaration International USA's Black Women's Caucus. I am here today with Ms. Vednita Carter, an abolitionist and survivor of the sex trade. She will be providing us with valuable insight on the dangers of this horrible industry. Ms. Carter, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you survived?
Okay, well, I'll tell you, I was in the sex industry a long time ago, back in the 70s. So I always say, it doesn't really change. You know, things are really the same. But I got into it through the strip industry. And I really like to let people know that, because people think that stripping is, I'm going to say, safe. And actually what it is, I call it the stepping stones to getting into prostitution. It's where you start. It's where you get trained. It's that area. So I was pretty young when I did that. And I did it because I thought I'd be dancing and that I'd make a lot of money. And I went with a friend and we both did it. And one thing turned out to another, and I began to get into the life of actual prostitution.
Wow.
And so I wasn't in it for long. Thank God I got out. But one thing is that when I got out, I wanted to help other women that were involved, because when I was involved, there was nothing available really specifically for women who had been sex trafficked and prostituted.
Wow.
And the friend of mine didn't get out. And I always tell people that she stayed in the strip industry till she was almost in her late 40s. And unfortunately, she passed about 5 years after she got out. Wow. She met a pimp, and that's where the pimps hang out. A lot of pimps hang out, meeting women, young women, and trying to, convince them to be with them. And she was one of them that got caught up in that lifestyle. So the pimping lifestyle, and she just never really got out. So, but I just wanted to help other women, and so I started a program called Breaking Free. And Breaking Free is a program that was, well, it still is, Afrocentric program. Right. Works specifically with Black women and girls that are involved in prostitution. And as we go through, I can talk a lot about why that is. So why it's specifically Afrocentric. Wow. It isn't now, because I retired from there. So they hired on other people, and unfortunately it's lost that piece of it. But yeah, when I was doing it for 23 years, it was specifically Afrocentric.
Right. First, before we move on, I just want to say thank you so much for the work that you have done and what you will continue to do. It is so needed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Speaking of Afrocentric, how do the issues of race and sex connect in this? In other words, what unique challenges do Black women face compared to women of other racial backgrounds in the sex industry?
A lot of people don't understand this, but Black women have a lot of challenges. And one of the challenges is that I'm going to say that other races, specifically white, just assume that this is who we are. And let me just tell you a little story about that. In working with women and girls who've been in the life for, almost about 35 years, what happened was a white woman, a Black woman came to our program. And what happened was they were both court ordered. But when they got arrested, they were working the streets. And a police officer came and pulled them both, made them get into his car, and he knew what they were doing. They were regulars. They were out there quite a bit. And so what he did, though, when he got into the car, he told the Black woman after about 3 minutes to get out of the car and go back to doing what she does. She, that's who she is. So the white woman got really upset. And the white woman said, why does she get to get out? Why can't I? And he said, because you should know better. You're better than that. You can do anything. That's who she is. And I say that to say that hopefully this will help people understand, as we talk about this, the mindset of Black women in this lifestyle
Hmm.
who people assume that we are. I mean, right now they have, different, I say there's different modes of operation,
Mhm.
how women get involved and such, but the act is still the same. And the mindset of individuals, of people, specifically, I'm going to say white people, this is
Mhm.
how they look at Black women,
Mhm.
and so I did one thing that I did a little bit of research when I first got involved in all this, and I went into one of the porn bookstores, and
Mhm.
this is just something that I saw there that I guess it didn't really, it didn't really make me think, oh, I shouldn't expect this. But I
Right.
noticed in the porn, in the magazines of the women, the majority, almost all of the Black women that were in these porn magazines, they were tied up, they were beat up, they were just in some kind of I'll say some kind of way, they were just
Mhm.
looking real beastly, and that's how they had them, in all of these porn books. And the white women were all like roses, on them, are real
Mhm.
beautiful, real dainty, real feminine, real sweet. But the Black women were all real beastly looking, like this is who she is, her legs,
Mhm.
I mean, just different, different styles for her. And so that told me a whole lot right there. And so that is really how we still look to this day. That's
Mhm.
how they were perceived to be, this beastly type. We want
Right.
this, do anything you want to us. It's okay.
Right.
It doesn't hurt us. This is what we want. And I remember a story that my grandmother had told me long time ago. She said that the slave, her mother was 12 years old, she said, when the slaves were free.
Mhm.
And her mother walked from Mississippi to Kansas City, Missouri. And she was telling me how her mother used to tell her that she remembers older women, not real old, probably about in their
Right.
20s, early 20s, 25 maybe. They would just be pulled out of this group. There was a group of them, big group
Right.
coming, walking, and they
Mhm.
would just rape them and, just buy them and just give them, a couple dollars. And she said, and they tried to make that the norm. It was like, nobody said anything. Nobody downed these ladies because it wasn't their fault. I mean, they knew what was happening,
Right.
and they couldn't do anything about it. So see, we, even
Mhm.
from way back, it started way back,
Yep.
even during slavery, on
Mhm.
the ships, young Black girls were made to walk around the ships just naked at
Mhm.
the beck and call of these white guys. Anytime they wanted to have sex, they just pulled in a young little Black girl. So this really is, I mean, it's something that has been in happening to Black women
Yeah.
since the beginning of time over here.
Right. Definitely when you, as you were speaking, it does sound like, what I've read about slavery.
Yeah.
And I can also confirm, I was hearing from a Black woman survivor of the porn industry, and she said exactly that.
Mhm.
The things they were making Black women do, I mean, the most degrading, awful things.
That's it.
I mean, it's all degrading, but not nearly, what white women were made to do was not nearly as horrific
That's
as
right.
what Black women were made to do. It's terrible.
It's a whole different thing. Yes.
Right. Speaking of that, we kind of wonder what would lead Black women into this. For example, reminds me of a study or a paper that was published by the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation.
Mhm.
Now, Black women are about 7% of the US population, give or take. But according to this document, 40% of sex trafficking victims. And we're all just wondering, why is that? What leads them to get into it? Like, just how? Do you have any insight on that?
You know what? And I've always heard it was really higher than that, but that's
Hmm.
probably right. And I think what it is, it's just like I said, because one is just because we're the world that we're living in here in the United States, it's so racial. Everything is so racial.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know that there's a lot of Black young girls right now that are missing. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? And I really do believe they're being trafficked. A lot of them,
Yes.
the majority of them are being trafficked.
Mm-hmm.
And it is because who's going to really look for them? Do we really hear a lot about these young girls? Who are they? There's so many of them that are missing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that it would be different if she were a white girl.
Yeah.
There'd be all kinds of posters, all kinds of news
Mhm.
bulletins all over. But these are young Black girls, I believe, that are,
Mhm.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
why there's no, nothing being done about it, really. But the other thing is that I think that, and I hate to say this, and I sometimes I just even hate to put it on men to a big extent,
Right.
but this is something that has been in our culture, a lot of our culture for so long. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm just saying with the pimps, I don't know. I grew up in the 70s.
Mhm.
So I remember the movies, all the movies that
Yes.
came out that
Expectation. Yeah.
really, truly, it was a lot about pimping and buying girls, and
Mhm.
that was the in thing, and that was a cool thing, and that was
Mhm.
something that everybody was doing back then. You
Right.
know what I mean? And are trying to do. It wasn't seen as you're better than this.
Mhm.
Why do we have to be the pimps and the prostitutes and all of this kind of stuff in these movies?
Wow.
But that has something to do with it. The music has
Mhm.
something to do with that. And the drugs have something to do with that. I mean,
Mhm.
just all of the things that are happening in a lot of our communities, I
Right.
think are making people get drawn to it. And I
Mhm.
remember one of my first presentations many years ago was at a church to
Mhm.
talk about it, a Black church.
Oh,
And
okay.
I couldn't believe it because so many of the people were like giggling and laughing, and it was funny. They didn't take it really serious. It was like
A
prostitution.
church.
Oh, yeah, it was at a church, and I was shocked, I'll say, because then I was much younger too, but
Mhm.
I just couldn't understand why in this community here there's so many young women on the streets,
Mhm.
selling, I mean, selling their bodies, and and so I asked them,
Mhm.
what is so funny? I mean, these could be your daughters, your nieces, your
Mhm.
cousins, whatever, sisters, and a lot of them were really. And they got quiet after I said that. And I just began
Oh.
to say, with the average age of entry is between 12 and 14 years old, and even girls younger than that, Black girls
Mhm.
younger than that get involved in prostitution.
Wow.
But and then it has to do with our police, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Targeting, Black folk are always targeted. We're
Yep.
targeted, and Black men are targeted. We're targeted as women, and we're
Mhm.
just, I mean, we're the first
Mhm.
on the list for everything. You know what I mean? And
Right.
and when a Black woman is targeted for prostitution, normally what happens is she ends up doing some time in jail.
Yes.
And if
Yes.
she has kids, she ends up losing her kids to child protection,
Yeah.
or her kids have to live with a relative if she has someone that can watch them. I mean, and I mean, there's just so many things that happen with that because
Mhm.
like I said, worked with so many women,
Mhm.
and I worked with these two women that got caught prostituting in a hotel, again,
Mhm.
Black and white. And what they did was a Black woman didn't, when they arrested them in this hotel, they were about maybe 30 years old. But the
Mhm.
thing is, they found a gun in the hotel room, and the women had the gun because you
Mhm.
gotta be protective. You never know what's gonna happen to you when you're in a life.
Mhm.
But anyway, they
Wow.
found the gun, and they immediately blamed the gun on the Black girl,
Oh gosh.
the Black woman. And what happened was she ended up going to prison for 2 years with the prostitution charge and a gun charge.
Mhm.
And the white woman, they ended up sending to drug treatment.
Mhm.
She needed treatment. She needed to be
Mhm.
rehabbed. She's better. She can do
Yeah.
better. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And this is stuff that happens all the time.
Right.
Women, we wonder why is it so hard for her to get out? So many
Mhm.
of them catch cases, records that
Right.
they can't get out.
Mhm. It's so disheartening to hear, but it's the truth, and we have to hear it. We have to
Yeah.
know what the reality is for Black women and girls who are victims of this industry. And we mentioned the differences between Black women and white women who are victims of the industry. But have you ever noticed any differences between men who are victims and also Black women who are victims? Because particularly we hear a lot about men who believe that they are women, like the world knows them as
Oh
trans.
yeah,
Are there
sure.
any differences there you see?
Oh, definitely.
Mm,
I'll say that we were one of the first programs in the country that said we're going to start working with trans men. because there's a lot of trans men out there. And
mhm,
I'll say, and the majority of them that were in the area that I'm in, the community I'm in, are Black young men, you know.
mhm,
And so I said, yeah, we're going to start working with them. And, you know, I
mhm,
mean, they deserve to get out and, you know, try
mhm.
to get a better life and so on and so forth.
Right.
So we started working with young men
Mhm,
who were in prostitution. And what
right.
happened was, oh my goodness,
Mhm,
it was really, I'll tell you straight up, it didn't work. What happened was we have groups because we try to talk to the women and
mhm.
try to help them to understand the dynamics of prostitution,
Right.
you know, to help them get out. And so the men were going to the groups too,
Mm,
the young men, and they'd always come in and they talk about something. For instance, when the woman would tell her story about how a guy got her in the room and he
mhm,
didn't want to pay her, he raped her, and he did all kinds
mhm,
of other things to her. Well, the young men would say, "What? That happened to you? That had never happened to me, you know, because I'll beat his ass." You know what I mean? He's
mhm.
not. So we realized just in working with men, this is just one little quick story of that.
Mhm,
There is a difference between a young man and
mhm,
a woman in the life of prostitution.
mhm,
One thing is he's got muscle, okay?
mhm.
So he can fight his way out of a lot of
Right,
situations.
right.
He's not gonna just take anything. You know what
Mhm,
I mean? And two, if he robs a person, he's more likely gonna be able to do that. I'm not saying that, you know, some of the women say, well, all of the women say they'd rather rob a person than have sex
mm,
with him, you know.
right.
And I definitely get that one. But there's a lot of things that a man can do that
Mhm,
a woman just cannot do in
right.
this life. And we realized that the women were, we had a area where they could take showers and get,
Mhm,
you know, clean clothes and all of this and that. And what would happen is women would start complaining that the men were trying to pull their towels off them.
mhm,
And so I sat down and talked to a couple of the men. I said, why are you doing this? I said, this is a program, you know, that's, we're trying to help you. And you're here, you know, trying to pull towels off of women after they get out of the showers and stuff. And they said, well, you know, we're also a man. We're a man too. I said, oh, really? You know, I mean, that was, you're a man too and a woman. Okay. So we decided
Oh,
we couldn't work with that particular group, you know,
mm,
because there were too many, we just didn't
oh,
have what we needed to
mhm.
do it. So
Yep.
yeah.
Men are
Yeah.
still men, no matter what they call themselves.
Yeah, that's right, right. And they have a whole different look, I mean,
Mhm,
a view of this issue, you
mhm.
know, than the women do. They really do. You know what I mean? I mean, it's pretty sad actually.
Yes. Now, for as far as getting out, I'm under the assumption that it can be very difficult and maybe even dangerous, for a woman who's trying to leave,
Yeah,
this horrible industry.
yeah,
What obstacles might they face, and where can they turn to for help?
yeah. That's a whole big, it
Mhm,
is very hard for a woman to get out. It really
mhm,
is. Because the majority of women who are involved in the life of prostitution, they have pimps.
mhm,
You know what I mean? And you just don't walk away
mhm,
from him. I mean, because he's already threatened you and told you what he's gonna do to you.
mhm,
You know, he's gonna hurt you, he's gonna keep your child, he's gonna, you know, hurt your family.
mhm,
And she believes that because more than likely she has been hurt by him already.
mhm.
One of the things that we tried to do at Breaking Free was we try to relocate women,
Okay.
try to call other programs in other states, because that's how bad it is. If
Yes.
you can really get her out of the area that she lives in and works in,
Mhm,
she's going to have a better chance of getting out and staying out longer. You know,
mhm,
she doesn't know anybody. She's entering a whole nother place. And she, you know, and if she's serious about really wanting to get out
mhm.
and get herself together, that's one of the first things that we would try to do. But that there's not a lot of programs. So
Right.
that wasn't something that was really easy. So what we did was we provided housing for women,
Mhm,
transitional and permanent housing. So
mhm.
our transitional houses were out. They
Yeah.
weren't in the city. that were out, like in kind of in the suburbs,
Mhm.
long enough, far enough away to where a woman couldn't just come back in, and she didn't want to. So
Wow.
we would put women in those programs in order to help her. But
Mhm.
we couldn't, we were working with about 500 women a year.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of women in our program. Transitional houses only held up to about 25 women.
Wow.
And so that's, so it wasn't, it was very difficult. But
Mhm.
one thing is to help her to get out. Well, this is what I always say. She needs three things. She needs housing.
Mhm.
Most of the women, the majority of the women that came to Breaking Free were homeless,
Wow.
jumping from couch to couch. So
Mhm.
she needs her own place, a place
Mhm.
that she can know she's going to be there for a while. And she
Right.
doesn't have to worry about up and leaving in 6 months or 30 days, or, she's
Mhm.
there at least for 2 years.
Right.
And then she needs a job, you see, and many of them come and they don't have uh, their high school diplomas,
Right.
because they've dropped out of school,
Mhm.
they had to. And so we have to work on that with them too, in order to get them a decent job that they can get paid at. But
Mhm.
what we did was we had contracts with employers that would hire women that were in our program.
Right.
And Breaking Free, we fundraised and got money that would help pay
Mhm.
their first 30 days of working. That's
Right.
for the employer. That's the little benefit he got. But they had to sign a contract, say they'll
Mhm.
hire her full time if she worked out. And a lot of programs don't want to, it's extra work. It's footwork, it's talking,
Mhm.
it's a lot of work, you know what I
Yes.
mean? But that's what she needs. She has to have a job. It's
Mhm.
because if she doesn't, what is she gonna do? She's gonna go back to what she
Mhm.
knows.
Yeah.
So it's housing, it's a job, and then it's support groups.
Mhm.
When you've been involved in the life from 12 years old to 30, 40, 50, maybe 60 years old,
Mhm.
you need to talk about that.
Yep.
You need to understand this isn't something I did. This
Mhm.
is something that was done to me.
Mhm.
Many times women believe in their minds that I did this thing here. I
Mhm.
should have made better choices. But lots of times you don't have any other choices that you can make based
Right.
on your situation. And
Mhm.
for a lot of Black women, they don't have a lot of choices to make. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? You're coming from foster care, possibly broken, families. You know what I mean? I mean, just
Mhm.
all kinds of things are happening, but
Right.
they have to be able to get their self-esteem back up,
Mhm.
or get it up. Period. Maybe they've never even had any self-esteem. It's something because today I spoke to a woman on the phone, was one of my first clients, I'll
Right.
say,
Mhm.
way back, on I'm gonna say the early 90s. And
Mhm.
she's still in the life. And she told me she's 55 now.
Wow.
Yeah, she's been in the life since she was about 13 years old. And can you imagine what is going on in her mind right now?
I can't.
I mean, she's been a drug addict, alcoholic. She was forced into it. Her mother was in the life.
Mm.
That's another thing. It can be generational.
Mhm.
I had a one woman who she had 4 kids,
Right.
and her one daughter got into prostitution. And I remember going somewhere, but I seen her out there working. So I said, well, let me
Mm.
pull over and just talk to her for a while. Here
Wow.
she had her baby hidden behind some bushes while she was turning tricks. She was,
Mhm. This is
there's a
horrible.
lot of things happening. You know what I mean? And a lot
Right.
of things that people don't understand that's happening.
Mhm.
So we have to also break that
Right.
generational, I always call it a curse, but
Yeah.
we have to break it. You know what I mean?
And
But
I'm
it's not
thinking,
easy to get out.
and it's so frustrating, like listening to all the truths that you're imparting. When people, advocates, they'll call themselves, calling this a choice. Sex
Yeah,
work is work. I'm thinking, who on
that's
earth
it.
could choose this? No woman in
No,
really gonna choose this. There's a
yeah,
reason why she's either pushed out there, or a reason why she does it, and it's
that's
never
right.
really a choice.
And sex work just makes it harder for
Mm-hmm.
all women when you
Yes.
call it that, because
Mhm.
people would like to believe, I mean, you know, that's what it is, because work doesn't sound so bad. I'm going to work.
Mhm.
This is not work, not when you're getting raped, not when you're getting
Mhm.
beat up, not, you know, I mean, just being sold, period. This is
Wow.
not work.
It's
And
not.
when I always try to help women who have never been in the life to understand
Mhm.
what prostitution is you got to imagine if you're having sex with your husband or your boyfriend, he wants it once, twice, maybe 3, 4, 5 times a day. You're going to
Mhm.
get, you know, after a while, some might get tired of that.
Of course.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so now you got to think of a stranger, you
Mm.
know, wanting a stranger 1, 2, 5 times a day, maybe 10. I had a one woman telling me that her quota was at least 15
Oh
guys a
God.
day. And you have to imagine that, you know what I mean? This is not work. I
It's
call
not.
it torture, a form of
Torture.
torture.
Slavery 2.0.
So yeah, yeah, it really is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yeah, it's definitely not, but calling it work really makes it hard for those that are involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to get out, hard to live with that. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's far from work.
Any final thoughts for feminists or even mothers, parents, in order to like hopefully
Yeah.
avoid our young girls getting caught up in this? Any parting advice for us?
Well, one thing is, I think that people have to start talking to their daughters and their sons about it,
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't talk about the men, the demand part of it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like I said, the average age is between 12 and 14. Who is the
Right.
demand? Who's buying these little girls?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when they go to the malls and they go to the shopping centers, there's always somebody there, believe me, that
Right.
is trying to say something to them. But if you
Mm-hmm.
never talk to them about the fact that there's a possibility
Mm-hmm.
somebody may try to offer you something.
Of course.
You know what I mean? A lot of girls don't hear that from their parents. You know, they're so used to, you know, and they're at that age too, where they think they know everything. But
Mm-hmm.
you have to have a sit down conversation and really tell them this is a possibility. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of little girls that are just disappearing. I've had
Yes.
about, what was it, about 6 little girls that were brought to our program by the FBI that
Mm-hmm.
were in the Mall of America here in
Yes.
Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was the guys were just talking like any old, you know, they were cool to them.
So
And
frustrating.
they thought everything was all right. What happened? They remember waking up in Chicago in a motel and different men
Minneapolis to
came
Chicago.
and out, in and out. And all they kept saying, the little girls were telling me in the group, all we kept saying was, somebody please call my mom.
Mm.
Tell her where we're at. I'm telling you, this happens all the time, but we don't hear a lot about it. You know, we just don't. So it's for us to really educate them, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and let them know that this could happen to you, and you've got to be
Yes.
aware of what's going on around you all the time. For
Absolutely.
femi-
Absolutely.
yeah, I think for feminists, you know what I mean? I think that they need to start listening to Black women,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and say it well and listen to what we say, and knowing that what we're saying is truth,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for us. And there's not a lot of Black women that want to, I mean, that call themselves feminists, you know, or that want to
Right.
be a part of this movement. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole other conversation,
Yeah.
but I understand that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to say that I do understand that to a
Right.
big degree.
Yes.
It's not Black woman friendly.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't. And
Right. And well, I thank you again. I just want to thank you so much for doing this work. It is so needed. Thank you for everything you've done again, and thank you for what you will continue to do. And if you are so inclined, audience, please click on the link below, read the declaration, sign it, join us in this fight. Thank you
yes,
so much.
you're welcome. Thanks for having me.